3, 2, 1.
Light them up.
I'm Paul.
This is Buck.
This is the Paul and Buck Show.
Hey, the big bucking deal. Hear us. Download the latest app at paulandbuckshow.podbean.com.
So we're back. We've got a new episode. This time we've got the son of the NHRA famous WIllis Ragsdale. WIllis Ragsdale was, he's an icon here in Texas for drag racing from the 50s up until the 80s. He was altered roadster from the very beginning. He ran in some of the classes from the early days. His son was there throughout the whole time, and I've gotten to meet his son over the years, and we always either meet up at the track or we meet up at some show. We always have a great time, a good time talking about his dad, and I think I've met his dad once or twice. He's up in his age, just like the Thunderbolts. But this show we're going to talk about Trey Ragsdale.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about him. He told me a lot about.
Yeah, he's been there the whole time with
and
his dad.
Trey,
yeah, growing up with his dad. So we want to get the spin. We want to get what his thoughts from drag racing are from yesterday till today. And so here he is. Say your name.
Hey guys, Trey Ragsdale.
What's going on?
Thanks
Awesome.
for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Hey, so like we ask anybody, how did you get into the world of cars? How did you get into drag racing? What were you doing in your early days, high school? What were you doing back then?
Well, as they say, I was pretty much born into it. So by the time I was 7 or so, I found myself in the garage with my dad pretty much on a nightly basis, because it was a nightly thing.
And what car did your dad have back then?
At that time, he had a altered. He was in the Class B altered.
Okay.
It was a roadster, so he was at that time he was probably. I guess he was 10 years into racing.
So, so for those listeners here, the car that you're talking about, that's the one that's got the big logo from the Snyder cams.
It did later on. That was the Snyder cams. That's a whole other story.
Well, August Hans Harkoff also had it on his 56.
Yes, that was a package deal between the two.
Okay.
Oh,
That's a whole story.
I definitely knew that was something.
That was around 66 probably. So
Okay.
yeah, right about the time I'm talking about when I started,
Okay.
getting involved with my dad.
All right.
Yep. If you'll notice, not much longer after that, those were blanked out.
Yeah.
So-
Okay. Well, so we interviewed the Thunderbolts, and the show just aired recently because we upload every Monday a full show goes on. Olin, the guy that we interviewed, he had mentioned back in, I guess it was in the late 50s, he had raced your dad, and it was printed. It was a printed article. I don't know if it was in Drag News or if it was a local paper, but he had it on there, and Olin was a real good drag racer back then. Mm-hmm. And so to race right next to your dad was already. He already had a career in drag racing pretty early on, because he's also into the Hall of Fame, right?
That. Yes, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. They thought he had retired, but he was building another car. So it's kind of funny.
What are you talking about? Yeah.
I don't know if that's a credential to get inducted. If you're supposed to be retired tonight.
Yeah.
But yeah, his first race was in 1957 in Houston, and it escalated pretty quick from there. He won his class in Detroit in 1959. Set a national record at that race as well. And then 2 years later at the U.S. Nationals at Indy, won the Eliminator.
And I've seen that's the photo. You see him with his hands up.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of his photos, and I don't remember if it was even Facebook. I just remember seeing Ragsdale, and it's not a very common last name, but when I saw it, I said, you know what? I think I'm gonna ask this guy if he's got any relation with the guy in those photos. And sure enough, you responded, "That's my dad."
Yeah.
And I said, "What?" I said, "We got to talk." And and it wasn't much longer that I ran into another deal where they wanted to set up photos for the F1 track that they were building in Austin. And I had some photos from your dad, and well, not directly from your dad, of your dad, and we had some history on it. I mean, we knew that's when they had done the Hall of Fame Division 4 here in Texas, and so that was a big thing. And so some of these photos from the local Austin racers went up, and little by little, I don't know if he ever made it to the restaurant. It did close down eventually, but I know that some of those early on key players from Austin went up there because they were surprised to see their photos up there. And I know I had put one of your dads up there, and
Which restaurant was this?
it was just a little fish and chips restaurant that
Okay.
was right there by the F1 track when they were building it. It got a lot of coverage early on, and it made it into the Sunday paper. They went out there, they interviewed a few of us, and it's a long ways from here.
Right.
But I would, every now and then, I'd get the phone call from the owner. He goes, "Hey man, you need to get up here, man. This guy just showed up. I don't know. He looks ancient, but he's like pointing at his car." And so by the time I'd get there, they already ate and they were gone. But but yeah, it did happen a few times, and your dad was just always mentioned in these stories. So
Yeah, I mean, he was born and raised here in Austin, so he did know a lot of people here.
they all went to Austin
before
High School.
He and August were classmates at Austin High.
Yeah,
And
these
he
guys
was-
were responsible for getting, I guess, the early drag strips here set, and one drag strip, a safe place to race. I believe
Yeah.
that's what they were always doing. Because I found a lot of newspaper articles saying that they were campaigning and they were doing this, all sorts of stuff. This is lost info. Nobody's connected, with that.
Right.
But if it wasn't for them, there would have been no Austin Raceway Park in the 60s. There probably organized racing probably wouldn't have happened here in the central area.
Right.
And it would have just been a whole lost deal. California is very documented, but not so much in the central Texas. And your dad was he played a big part in
Yeah, he
these
was
clubs.
he was very proud of where he was from, and when he went out of state, he took it personally. He was representing Texas,
Yeah, he was.
So he first Winter Nationals he went to in '65. The guy that held the national record at that time in his class was from California, so he was
Right.
going to his home turf,
Yeah,
and he beat this guy
yeah.
on his home track and set the record himself doing it.
That's
Yeah.
bragging rights.
So
Yes.
that's when you do that,
Yeah.
and you represented your state,
And that's
so.
what he did. That's every time I would look up something or find something, I'm like, man, this guy's just there. Boom, he's there. I mean,
Yeah.
there were like other names, but your dad's name has always been one guy for somebody to say, look, here's WIllis Ragsdale, or I raced him, and
Yeah.
and that's what it's always been. So I always wanted to know what it was like to be in your shoes, right there, right next to him.
It was even at a young age, I realized how lucky I was,
Yeah.
and took advantage of that, and just I even quit sports when I got into high school. I quit sports, and I loved sports.
Yeah.
I loved baseball. I was a pretty good baseball
Yeah.
player, but I knew that I had to pick one or the other, and
wow.
But yeah, I learned so much, and I still have a lot of that stuff
yeah,
in my memory and can still do
Wow.
those things. You know?
right.
I learned how to work on 426 Hemis through and through, small block Chevy, small block Ford, the whole thing. I
This
learned
stuff
how
people
to
don't get.
overhaul a Liberty clutchless transmission.
Wow. Yeah.
So
I
I'm sure
remember.
you got a lot of knowledge growing up, and just all that stuff was in that time. It was unique.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
a 426 Hemi.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't your standard
So,
package.
so I did. I felt lucky, and I was a lot like my dad. I didn't like to talk about it a lot or brag about it to the public or people at school. I wouldn't talk about it, but they'd ask me about it, and I'd just say, "Yeah, that's my dad."
Did you like most dads who race today? they'll have a son that's growing up along with them, and then all of a sudden you see the son now is kind of moving along with the dad, and they have their own car. Did you have your own car with him back then? Did you race something in another class?
Never did.
Never built a car or something?
I never even had a hot car at all. I mean, I had dorky cars growing up.
What's a dorky car to you? Come on, tell
I'll
us.
tell you, my first car was
Yeah.
a '59 VW Beetle.
No, there we go.
Okay,
At least it was
all
popular.
36 horsepower of it.
45 miles an hour, or
Yeah,
35.
yeah.
How fast was it?
It might go 60 with a tailwind downhill.
So you never did. That's
No,
surprising. Why?
I don't know. I just I was more into the racing part, so I didn't really, I wasn't a street guy. I'd go hang out with some of my friends. Would hang out with some of the street guys, and I'd just stand in the background. I didn't talk about racing much.
But you didn't go to one of the street races, or
I saw maybe 2 or 3 my entire youth, and it is only because I happened to be with guys
that were already in the sport.
that were getting ready to go watch one. They said, "Hey, come on," and so I went, but it was just a totally different thing to me.
So I guess for you already, you're just being around your dad at the
You've been exposed to it, and you're like, I see this every weekend or whatever.
Yeah, I mean it's just it's apples and oranges.
Right.
We're sitting here beating ourselves to death. 20 to 30 hours a week,
Saturday, Sunday,
trying to pick up 200ths of a second. It literally was that way.
Yeah.
I mean,
So you were crew chief, crew mechanic.
I was from the
tire
time I
changer.
was literally 13 or 14. I was the crew chief.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a serious mom.
That's awesome.
Dad and son.
I mean, I
I
don't
agree.
tell anybody, but when I was 14, I was hauling the car and trailer on I-10 to Louisiana while my dad slept
Hey,
because
yeah.
he'd been up all night working on the car.
So there you go,
That-
Josh.
Hey man,
Yeah.
that may have been a common thing,
Yeah.
but like I said, you go back and I just think about the perspective, like when you see.
Did
that
you ever
movie.
do that? But
Man, I started driving when I was 12. So anyway,
Yeah.
but anyway, so like it puts me back when you think about the movie Shirley Muldowney, Harley
Yeah,
Will,
yeah.
right? And
Yep.
that you put that in that perspective in that time.
yeah,
You either struggling or you got big money, but
Yeah.
you're trying to make a race or trying to
Yeah.
make ends meet, and you're just doing what you can.
so you got that toolbox in the back of
Yeah,
the
you
truck.
got-
Camper, what's going on? What kind of,
Well, there's things I can't say here, I'm sure.
to the best of your knowledge.
There were many trips.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah.
The tow truck I remember the most was our '69 Ford pickup,
Yeah,
390,
Big
and that was a
motor.
hauling son of a gun.
yeah.
Yeah, it got 10 miles a gallon, whether it was floored with a load or empty.
And this is
Yeah,
and this is a single cab. Or,
Single cab. So I would literally lay in the bed of the truck on the way to the track to get some sleep, and I'd have a 120-pound floor jack over here, toolbox over here, spare transmission up here, and you just hope when you hit the brakes it
Didn't
didn't.
slide
nothing slides to you or wake you up,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, that's the way it was, and
Yeah.
I mean, that's good, great for sharing it because it gives everybody the perspective.
Yeah, today everybody is spoiled.
Yeah.
Today we all have to have the enclosed trailer.
Right.
If it's an open trailer, it's going to be a one-time thing. You're going to come right back. But nobody really ever sits down to think about how serious of a team
You
it
have
was
to
to
be.
be back then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and believe me, I had to fight my dad, later in his career. Finally talked him into getting an enclosed trailer, I guess, when I was about 20.
So about what time frame? What
Yeah,
years
what
are we
time
talking
frame
about?
was that?
I was about 21. It's about 81 is when we finished building his last car.
Wow. So
And,
most of your childhood life,
Pretty much, yeah. It was just
single cab truck.
Two-wheel open trailer.
yes.
Imagine going down 35
Well-
and you see this race car.
Well, yeah. If you think about it, let's think about it. Speed limit was probably 55.
Yeah.
But granted, there's probably still some idiot stuff. But yeah, it's just a matter like you see something going down the street. But I mean, if you think about it, just how you're driving in the interstate now, people flying by.
Yeah.
It might have been like that back then because you're hauling, you got load,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
so
Well, you remember,
I can only imagine.
You remember I-35 in the 80s. We're little kids.
Yeah.
It wasn't as complicated
No,
as
it was
is
nothing.
today.
It was nothing like
Yeah,
this.
I mean, it's still the same road, like between here and Dallas. It's still that
Yeah.
same. It hasn't
But
changed
I think
much.
back then it may have been 2 or 3. Now it's 4 or 5, whatever it is now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. But yeah, to your point, you're driving, you're trying to make a race. You hadn't sleep, you're tired, you're cranky, you're pissed, whatever, hungry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the struggle. That's what the real thing about it.
There's so many. One of the ones that sticks out the most is when I was about 17 or 18.
Yeah.
We were going to a points race in Louisiana. Or no, we were actually going to the Cajun Nationals.
Cajun Nationals, yeah.
And it was middle of the night, of course. We had to thrash, and so it was Friday night, and I'm driving. Dad's sleeping in the back, and I brought a buddy with me this time to help us.
Yeah.
And we're almost to Vidor. I don't know if you know where Vidor is.
East Texas, yeah.
Yep, it's close to Orange, right in there.
Yeah.
Not far from the border.
Yeah.
It's like 1 o'clock in the morning,
That's
and
back roads. That's like really like true back roads.
Yeah.
We did take the back roads one time.
Yeah, Vidor.
but I'm on I-10.
Oil
I'm going
rigs.
about 70, and I hear this. I feel this thump, and then all of a sudden I look in the mirror and I see glowing red and sparks, and the trailer spindle had, the bearing had
locked up.
Yeah, and so the spindle melted off, and here comes the tire, and the glowing spindle next to us. And I'm not lying.
Glowing spindle.
It took the shoulder past us.
Yeah.
Took the exit, went up into a gas station, an all-night gas station.
Yeah.
And hit the back of a car. Guy's standing there filling his car up with gas, and it hit the back bumper. Somehow it missed him.
Wow. Did it ignite the car?
No.
No, he got lucky.
And the guy was cool about it. He was from Florida traveling, and it was a rental car. He said, "Don't worry about it. I'll
not mine."
Yeah.
Oh.
But anyway, we were up all night.
Damn.
We took the car off the trailer, the race car off the trailer, drug the trailer and the race car into town.
Yeah.
And we camped out at a closed down gas station while my dad went and found a welder to fix that trailer.
Wow.
Middle of the night.
We rolled into Baton Rouge at daylight.
Damn, that was a long night, right?
Dad drove without sleep. Drove his race car without sleeping.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's serious business, man.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, these are the stories people do not.
That's like what movies are like. You think that's like.
You could have made this is a movie right here.
That same race, we dropped a valve. First round of eliminations.
Oh man.
We were running titanium valves by then.
What kind of motor was this?
This was Boss 302.
Okay.
But we'd launch at 11.5 and shift at 95.
They're titanium valves already back then.
Yeah.
This is.
So anyway,
that wasn't like no cheap part back then, by the way.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So we drop a valve, we bring it in,
Got thrash.
we yank the head off. There's chunks of valve just shoved into the top of the piston. We bring the piston to the top, literally chisel the chunks out of the piston.
Wow.
Take a file and sandpaper and smooth the piston off best we can. The valves in the head were all bent, and so we knocked those out of the head.
Yeah.
The exhaust seat's all chewed up.
Oh,
it ain't got a seat, but we
yeah.
took a valve and just pounded it into the seat.
Till you get
make
a
it
seat.
And I said, Dad, what about compression? And he said, it'll make compression when I spin it fast enough. So he gets up in there in the burnout, and it literally sounds like a freight train. You can hear that valve like.
Oh wow!
It dropped 12 hundredths from the run before.
1200s only?
Yeah.
That's practically a dead cylinder. So that's pretty damn.
Is that not amazing?
That's pretty damn good.
Wow.
Yeah.
You would drop a whole lot more than that if it was because you figured
No,
cylinder.
I was thinking it was going to slow down a quarter of a second.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Hey, that's pound that seat in. It's in the seat.
Obviously,
Did you get the texture around that seat and valve?
Obviously, your dad's been around this before. He knew.
No, he was driven. He just he was going to make that next round, and whatever it took.
How many?
That's crazy.
How many varieties of motors did he run? He wasn't never stuck to one manufacturer.
He had basically four phases of his career. First part was small block Chevy, then the Hemi, and he went back to the small block Chevy, and then he finished his career with a small block Ford.
And
Small block Ford.
that's because he's just content with the
Whatever
small
would
block?
fit the class that he wanted to run the
okay.
best.
Yeah, you mentioned it before the interview. You said everybody goes with what works.
Right,
And if
right.
if that was worked with the class, because I'm sure your class racing,
Yeah.
they got weight requirements and cubic inch, whatever it was.
Well, the reason he went to the Ford is while we were building a new car, NHRA decided to
Yeah.
quote unquote make our class an econo class, the one we were running in.
Yeah.
So before that, it was basically like a pro stocker, but in a
Yeah.
roadster. Okay, but they
You're talking about the red one, the red
Yeah,
roadster? Okay.
But so what they did is they said heads to be stock heads, no porting, single 750 CFM carburetor
Wow.
instead of 2 4s.
Damn, that's not gonna do nothing.
So
think.
Yeah.
immediately Dad said, okay, well, stock heads, I'm going with Cleveland style head because that's hands down the best.
Yeah.
That's
back
why he
then.
went to a Ford.
Mhm.
So yeah, within a year he had that small block Ford set the new record.
God.
They
Every
that's
combination.
with steel valves too. So we were turning that one with steel valves over 9,000. Then they decided, okay, you can run titanium valves now. And they kept changing the rules, and
Yeah.
they finally said, okay, you can run aftermarket heads now. And it went from,
They're trying to restrict you guys.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
funny
So-
because the NHRA is still doing that crap.
oh yeah, no, they
Yeah.
played
Like-
they
like
played the game.
every
you know,
race, they
it's-
like change the rules.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So anyway, you just have to kind of roll with what's there, and you try to use what is going to make you the fastest in what class you're in. So,
And what type of transmission was he running back during that period right there?
clutchless.
Clutchless?
He's running. We started out with a 4-speed in the early '80s, and then in around '83 or '84, we moved to a 5-speed Liberty.
They were all Liberty. Oh, that's
Yep.
why. Okay, so there's a
Yeah.
point where when I'm eating, you're like, hey, I've got these old T-shirts, and it was all Liberty. Different years throughout the year.
Yeah.
But
Now he knew Joe Liberty from way back before he even made the clutchless.
pause it
He,
real quick.
Yeah, hold on.
Don't pause.
Okay. We're back.
That never happened.
Of course, yeah. Anyway.
That dude, is it a motorcycle or now the alarm?
Well, the motorcycle guy comes about 9:30. Anyway, so we're back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Liberty transmissions, that was preferred, or that's what you guys ran.
Yeah.
Your engine combination. Do you know what your dad really preferred? I mean, as far as small block Chevy, Hemi, or that Cleveland.
He really didn't care.
It just
His goal was to make the most horsepower per cubic inch for whatever class he was in. So
Whatever
that
was
small
working.
block Ford, when he retired, we were making about a little over 2 per inch out of that single 750.
That was still
It was a 311 making 630.
Wow.
God. What was the fastest ET that particular combination went?
He held the record when he retired at 877 153.
Motor.
Yeah, that two per cubic inch per pound, right? That's the ratio of what you make per horsepower per cubic inch.
Right.
This should tell people even today.
know
Go
this.
stock up on some Cleveland heads because
Well.
these guys were making some serious power with those heads, and so
Well,
you
you
can
know-
imagine
That was
what
40
you
years
can
ago,
do.
man.
The LS is
Yeah.
basically designed around it.
It really
Yeah, I
is.
know the fire
Except for
order.
it doesn't have the canted architecture.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's still the Cleveland architecture is still unsurpassed
It is
for naturally aspirated.
You know what kind of made me think about that is when I the mains on the LS motors.
Mhm.
It's like the 390, the
Mhm.
old what do they call
Yeah.
those? The
Well, there's FE.
I mean, and
Yeah, if you-
the
yeah.
LS is a
Well,
nice package because they took the best of several engines and
Yeah.
tried to put it all
Yeah, I
together.
know.
Yeah.
If you look at a fire order, that's like an early Ford fire order, though.
is it?
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. People say it's got an LS fire order. I'm like, I learned from another guy, Glenn. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. It's kind of a Ford.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hate to say it because I'm a Chevy guy.
we got Ford. Josh, you have a Ford engine in you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. But
No, like,
you know,
man,
coming from a guy who
That's
knows,
see, that's all like this is all information. This is great info, man. This is like it's good, man.
Yeah.
And people don't see what you guys were doing back then they're saying they're
Yeah,
doing it now.
I kind of laugh when I hear, especially street guys. And I don't mean street racers. I mean like
Yeah,
street
just, of
guys
course.
talking about the technology this, technology that. And I laugh because
Yeah, we're doing it.
that's
back then.
the stuff we were doing 40 years ago.
Yeah,
That-
Right.
Yeah.
The reason you can mail order it now is because of what we did.
Because,
course,
yeah, the,
yeah,
the, technology,
no,
the stuff
that-
y'all broke.
Yeah.
I find that true.
Yeah.
That's 100% true.
Yeah.
So, if upon your memory, what was like the best experience, or what was the best track you ever been to? Let's say,
Indy, hands down.
Yeah, of course, yeah,
Yep,
Indy,
yep,
yeah.
yep.
And you've been to the West Coast. You've been to Pomona. And,
I have not. No,
Okay.
that's one of the few circuits I did not. I
Okay.
never got to make for whatever reason. My dad went to
of course, yeah, international.
California several times,
Yeah.
but no, I went to Gator National several times. Indy 4 or 5 times.
Indy handed down is a good track. Yeah.
Yeah.
I never been.
What's the surface like at Indy? Well, that's because we talk
Yeah,
about
I
It's
don't know.
it's pretty much like
60 full prep, the whole thing. What? How did
it's pretty much like most tracks.
Yeah.
The first I don't know, 100 feet
seem
or
like
so.
most tracks always have a transition. Always have.
Yeah,
it's
but
got
their transition
concrete-
is
yeah.
smooth, you
Yeah.
know, because that's the key. Is just that it's smooth, not you don't have a
Yeah.
big dip or hump or whatever.
Right.
The track at the Gator Nationals track is a nice track as well.
Yeah.
There's several good tracks out there. I mean,
Yeah.
Ennis was a very good track, except it just had a very narrow groove, and that's what gave a lot of guys problems, and eventually my dad. That's what ended his career.
Right.
But it had some crosswinds, kind of weird
Yeah.
crosswinds there as
that's
well.
unique.
I've heard that. I mean,
Yeah.
we've all gone, but yeah, Ennis was at that time in '86, '87 when it opened. That was like the first concrete, all concrete
Yep.
track.
Mm-hmm.
But I've heard that too about the groove, and I
Yep.
guess you can see it. Maybe it's gotten better. I don't know, but yeah, once you get past the grandstands,
Mhm.
Yep.
or when you,
Yeah.
and there's a crosswind because that track runs. It doesn't run north to south. It runs kind of like
It's kind of a diagonal. Yep.
southwest to northeast. Yeah, it's something weird.
And it's
So-
out in farmland, so
yeah,
there's nothing to
it's
break
open.
the wind.
It's open,
Yep.
yeah. So
I wonder if they even considered that when they were building that thing.
Billy Meyer, I don't know. I don't know. Have you ever had? Did you guys ever run Billy? Cause I know our Billy ran like top.
No, he
like
ran
that.
funny car.
Funny car.
Yeah,
He always
yeah,
ran funny car.
yeah.
So,
But no, we talked to him a few times, and that was that was sort of a breakthrough track. That was sort of the first super track, if you
yeah,
will.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was
So,
people running.
He
like
kind of
crazy
set the bar there.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, that track was one of the. It was fast. They broke like records like
yeah,
the first couple of years.
we were at the very first race they had there, and then we ran a couple more after that.
What was
Yeah.
your dad running there? What times? Mile per hour or whatever.
Same about that 870s,
870s.
152, 153.
That's
right
amazing.
there.
With the
Yeah.
with the standard.
basically small
style.
block Ford to Windsor. I mean,
Yeah, and Ford. So there you got it.
Well, I'm impressed about the RPM. It's like,
Yeah.
was it rotating assembly? Was it live? Was it aluminum?
And we didn't even have shaft rockers till about 85.
Wow,
It
man.
was stud.
Stud mount.
Man, so
You know,
what kind of block were these? What
high
kind of block?
maintenance, and
Yeah.
we'd probably change at least 3 valve springs every run.
Yeah. Well, that's high
And
RPM.
Yeah, you're spinning up that tight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something's gonna weaken,
Yeah.
especially those springs, man, hitting that RPM.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of block was this? Was this a production block, an early 302
Boss
block?
302.
A real
Is that
legit.
right?
Boss 302.
Wow.
Yep.
How long
They're
did you get?
strong.
Yeah, really?
I mean, the thing with blocks is they will hold up to a lot more than you think if your tune is right. When you start
Yeah.
getting into pre-ignition,
Yeah.
that's
Even-
where you tear stuff
Yeah,
up.
that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, over fueling even you can beat rings
Yep,
out.
yep.
Leaning, you can lift them.
But those Boss 302 blocks were very strong too. They were very compact and strong.
Can you still get them through the Ford Motorsport catalog? I wonder if you can still.
I think they do make a version. They do make
something.
I don't know. To me, it's one of those deals. If you're gonna spend that much, you might as well buy like a Dart.
Yeah,
something
yeah,
that's
yeah.
made strictly for racing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the evolution of like aftermarket parts. When you start looking at what you can pay for X, you can it makes a lot of sense. It's just a matter of what you're willing to spend and what kind of horsepower range you're looking to plan to put down and whatnot.
Yeah,
so.
the whole deal with the guys in the '90s with the holding on to the 5.0 motor, the true 5.0 before that 4.6 came out. It was always known. Even it got brought up to my attention when I ended up with the little Mustang. You really gonna put that thing's really gonna go into the tank? You're gonna crack that block. It was immediately and so what most guys would do back then is immediately just go to the dark block, aftermarket block, and then they'd really go deep. You know? But that was like known.
Those standard 302 blocks were pretty weak, especially right in the middle. They were known to split. So you definitely had to be careful with with pre-ignition on that.
But you guys, so there you go. So if you want something good,
go
get a Boss block.
That's the Boss block. I'm assuming you can find them, or it'll be aftermarket. But
no, we got a lot of runs out of that little thing. The valve train was the limit. And
typical maintenance, right?
God, I sit there and look at the stuff that's available now. And if we had the valve springs that they have now, and even the clutches, we were still learning clutches then. It was really hard to get the adjustment right on those clutches. It was either too severe or it slipped
too much.
Now they're just so much better. Well, just to give you an idea how much they have improved in our class since '87. We held the record at 873, 872, something like that. Now it is a second faster.
So, just 1 second over 40, almost 35
That's
years.
That's a huge amount.
That is.
That's neat.
But when you think about these teams that are doing that and how much money they have compared to the ratio of the money you guys were putting in back then, when you start putting $1, like who said it earlier? Somebody was saying yesterday about excessive funds or deep pockets or something like that. That's what it takes now. But what you guys are doing, it's just. I find it funny sometimes too. People say, "Oh man, I need to gain a second." I'm like, okay, you can do it either. If you can do it by motor, that's going to be a second's like $10,000, or you can take off weight. You take off weight, you're still going to throw $2,000.
You better have a lot of time, a lot of money.
A lot of time, a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's impressive if you think about it. Only a second difference from what you guys are running.
It's big.
To me, it's impressive that they improved that much. Wow. Honestly,
because that you think, are the rules still the same? Or are they okay? They are pretty much like there's no folding, nothing.
Well, the one thing that they did lack ease up on that I always hated when we ran was the aerodynamics. They would not let us put any kind of spoiler on our car, and it got really light on the top end. The back end, it was just a big curve, so it's like a wing.
Wow. So other than that, everything else is pretty much the same. Body modification.
Yeah.
Well, that is even more impressive because whatever you guys ran or whatever was done.
The car he's talking about, to put it in detail.
Yeah.
It's like a 27, 28 Model T that fiberglass drag roadster you can order.
Yeah.
That's the one that he's talking about. It's that one right there. So
I got you.
The guy sitting in the middle.
Except we didn't order. I built it.
Except
and I don't ever want to touch fiberglass again.
You actually had to build part of it. Most
itching for years.
Yeah.
I had to put the individual pieces together.
Right. Yeah.
Now I think you can buy it as a unit.
Yeah.
No, I channeled the fenders and blended them in and all that stuff, and we made the running boards we made out of a sheet of aluminum.
Wow.
Using the canopies all handmade out of aluminum.
Well, I know definitely you're gonna have pictures up, of course, when we.
He's got a lot of photos. How do people that want to look at this stuff, or they just want to know who you are? They just find your name, Trey Ragsdale, on Facebook. Is that what they?
Yeah,
do you have an Instagram account? Where
I do not. I'm
Nobody's
terrible.
jumped onto the Instagram account. I always tell people, if you get an Instagram account, you don't have to talk.
Yeah.
You just upload a photo and maybe 3-4 words, and that's all Instagram is. And so,
right.
every time I have a friend or somebody, he's like, what is that? Should I get on it? I'm like, well, are you selling stuff? Do you have? More than likely, this is where you're gonna make all your connections. And so it's easy. It's a lot less complicated.
Yeah, I just hadn't taken the time. I'm not a huge social media guy.
Right.
Well, I'm sure, like I said, we got some pictures. We can put some on our before the episode airs. But so let's jump forward now. When everything kind of slowed down, and where did life take you after that? I mean, are you still involved? Race, I know your dad may retired, of course. I guess when he got inducted, he was still building the car.
Right.
How has all that progressed since then now?
Well, what caused it to slow down? Because there is some point we got to return back to towards the end of it. So let him explain that, and then we'll go.
Let him go to that.
So what was the end of it towards his real retirement?
Well,
this was the 80s, right?
Well, in '87, we were at a national meeting at Ennis, and he had a bad wreck, and that's what ended his career.
I got you.
Wow.
It got out of the groove a little bit.
Yeah.
And it shot over to the other side and hit the wall.
This isn't one of his shifting going through.
So that's another story. So. This was literally like the second or third race that we ran with a power glide. We switched to another class, or we switched over to power glide because it gave us a 250-pound weight break. And we thought it was an advantage, and he never did like that combination. It just didn't. He didn't like the way it felt. It didn't. He could just handle the standard much better.
He was used to it because he ran that for the longest. Yeah.
But anyway, the car slammed into the wall on the other side, and it was pretty bad. It was, they had to cut the roll cage with the jaws of life to get him out, and they had to life flight him into Dallas, and he was there for a week.
Have you think they've made adjustments to the rules as far as the safety cages since those days?
Probably.
I
believe they have. I believe they've done better, and I mean, honestly, his car did a great job of, it wasn't a car. It was just a bad. It was just a bad collision. Those concrete walls do not give. Just look at Dale Earnhardt. That didn't look very bad, did it?
Right.
No, but it's the shakeup. Internally that you're going to hit your internal wall.
No, I mean, a photographer sent me pictures of the sequential of the wreck, and you can see his helmet, hitting the front cage, and it cracked his helmet. He had 3 ribs sticking out his back.
Oh, damn!
From the seat belts, just pushing his.
Right. Damn,
so it was, it was an impact.
But he recovered.
He did, and it took him several months, and he was and he was at that time he was in his late 50s. I think he was 57 or 58, and he wanted to come back. My mom said no. That's it.
That's it. That's a lot.
So I had just been married for about 3 years, and we were trying to have kids, and so it just kind of naturally drifted away from racing. I tried to keep up some, but just by reading and talking to guys and stuff.
But I guess a wreck like that, man, it kind of it puts a little traumatization as to whether you want to jump in the seat of a car.
The perspective too?
That part didn't bother me really, but it's like we were talking about earlier. You have to kind of it's almost impossible, especially nowadays, but even back then, it's almost impossible to have a family and spend quality time with them and race.
Because you're gone out of town almost every other weekend.
I just drifted toward.
Decision,
yeah.
But it's always going to be in my blood. I've always loved it. I've always tried to keep up. I still love pro stock. Still my favorite category.
It's something about those high revving engines, right?
Yeah, just to me, I just really appreciate those guys because they get so much. Kind of like how we did. They get so much out of what they have there. And that's they're it's all naturally aspirated. And.
Well, the other thing too that I appreciate about pro stock, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
that's all right.
You go and you look, their team is like 3 or 4 guys.
Yeah.
Like when you look at a pro team, like
Right.
There's 15 guys around, and it's just guys checking valves, checking clutch, doing general maintenance. That's it. And then I give a good example of Warren Johnson. I always kind of dug him because he was his own engine builder. He did everything. He was machinist. He crew chief. His son came along, but Kurt. But anyway, so that.
No, he and Glidden and Jenkins, those guys, they were all pioneers.
Yep.
And they were all self-driven.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Like I said, you made a good point because, like I said, that it's about the love. If you really want to do it, yes, but you got to there's got to be a balance, and that is the balance.
No, and there's no doubt in my mind if I had decided to do it, I'd have been good at it because it is in my blood. And
what kind of class do you think you'd go into? Would you go into a full car class?
I'd run comp.
Okay.
Comp.
It'd be I'd have to get some money somewhere. But,
Here's some sponsors again.
And I wouldn't be married.
Here you go again. There's a guy that said it once. He goes, in this life, either you stay single and you do this as a career, or you say, I have to step out, and then you do what's personal for your own enjoyment. Because this is a full-time. It's a full-time thing. You just there's no other time for anything else.
No, you're literally married to it. So. That's of course if I could find a ride, I would run pro stock. That'd be my ultimate dream. So
that would like Bob Glidden.
Yeah, but those guys, they're nowadays those guys are, even the budget teams probably have a $800,000 $1 million a year budget. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Those are the low end guys.
Yeah, I know. Like the most, I guess the stuff that most people like to watch today is I don't know what the word is, but it's pro mod where you've got the turbo versus the blowers, and I kind of whenever I get a chance to see it, if it ever catches TV or whatever, that's what I always want to see because that's where I'm like, man, that's the most competitive. I'm kind of tired already of seeing the funny cars, the long dragster.
Yeah.
It's been the same thing since the 80s. I mean, they're getting quicker,
right?
But all I see is how much was that run, and you can look it up, and it's costing this team a lot of money. And if they don't have big sponsors, I don't know how you can even keep those funny cars running because it's literally every run. I don't remember what the dollar sign is, but it's
they're crazy.
It's like
crazy
50,
expensive.
30, 40 grand a pass or something.
Yeah.
So anyway,
that's nuts.
So that brings up a good point.
Yeah.
What's your thought on the state of racing today? Like what NHRA?
What do you like to see? What do you think?
What do you enjoy? We know you like pro stock. That's something you would like to do, if you had an opportunity. But what do you think the state of racing is now, and do you see it moving forward or backwards?
It's another one of those things. It just depends on how you look at it and what you're. To me, to each his own. Everyone has their. I don't personally get into the nitro classes that much, but I know a lot of people do, and that's their thing. And I do feel like the NHRA has gotten away from the roots, that they don't have the fan base they used to for that reason. But I also see, I understand that they have to chase the money, and the money is where the TV coverage is, and the TV coverage says these are the cars we want to cover.
Right. They have to alter.
That's what it comes down to.
It's because these cars have brand X, brand Y, brand Z that we can show on TV, and they're going to help pay for our bill. So I get, that's how it works. I don't, again, to each his own, but I don't care for the what is the street race
Street Outlaws.
What do you think about the organizational skills on it's huge money that they win, but what do you think they could do better as far as the organization? One thing that I don't like is what they're doing is something that they have completely forgotten about, and that is the reason why nobody stands on the side of a drag race the whole 8th mile watching cars race. There's a reason why it stopped a long time ago, and your dad was doing this back then, but there's a reason why, and he could probably tell you, well, there's a reason why these guys don't stand there, and here's a few. And then there's another thing that these guys do that used to happen back in the 50s, early 60s, and that's where everybody piles up behind the bumper of these two cars that are going to go down the line. And there's also a reason why NHRA doesn't allow you to do that. But these guys on the lower level, they're doing it all over. It's like the clock is starting all over again. And if there's accidents, they're happening again. But can they be avoided? Because it happened already once under the early days of like your dad's career and all that stuff.
Clutches come apart or something.
What do you think? What do you think about that?
I can't believe that it has gotten this far, honestly, and it drives me crazy. I can't stand. To me, there's no reason to ever have more than 2 or 3 people per car up there, and the rest of the people need to be off to the side. And I can't believe that they are allowing themselves to face that kind of liability. The facilities,
Safety.
And it's got nothing to do with the type of racing they're doing. It's just how you let spectators just kind of hang around loose,
right? And I'm really shocked that more bad things haven't happened.
Right.
To be honest
or
with
maybe
you.
We're just like they used to say it back in the magazines. Let's just play it down. Let's not put coverage on those things. Because if you actually you can go Google, there's some bad wrecks that they just never put in the magazines. But they're coming out. They're surfacing, and you're starting to see these wrecks. Like I don't even want to talk about one that I was just told about recently, and the reason why Dallas International, the drag strip, why it shut down. There was some real nasty stuff that had happened at that track within those first couple of years, aside from the downfall of it. But some of the major things that went on, or 2 or 3, was actually accidents that happened there.
Yeah.
And
some of that is just from the fact that it's still sort of early stage of drag racing, and they had not figured out how to make cars as safe as they are now. It just kind of goes with time, but it's almost like we haven't learned.
Exactly.
It kind of rolled into generation.
And I'm kind of torn about the whole. Most of these tracks have gone to concrete walls, and I get why, because they're great at containing stuff, but they're also terrible at injuring people. The guardrails had cushion, but there have been some terrible guardrail stories too. So it's kind of a trade-off. I would like to see, like they have in NASCAR, I'd like to see safer barriers.
The cushion.
Yes.
Yeah.
That'd be a little.
I mean, you would think that why hasn't that even rolled in?
Right.
Because NASCAR, they're doing well over 200 or close to it, and then they absorb
at least
that shock energy.
Bigger, better tracks at NHRA, you would think they would do that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But as far as where racing is going, what I'd like to see it get back more to local tracks having big races. That's going to attract crowds with big payouts. And that's what NHRA was doing in the 60s and 70s.
That's what they were doing to promote. And I guess too that they were kind of promoting, like when they were trying to get the streeters off the track, right?
That was the whole thing.
That was the whole purpose, right?
Get them off because they were doing. Well, I mean, there's 2 things that were happening back then. But you are on topic. But the other thing that they were doing is, back then they didn't really know what a drag race was. These cars had just been constructed. It was kind of like the age of 18, 19-year-olds today. They're building these weird cars and they don't know what.
They called them jalopies back then.
Well,
right?
they call them jalopies back then. Today, there's another word for them. But the one thing that's always on these topics, and they may sound repetitive after a while, but the reason why I always ask guys that have been into that did a career of drag racing, the generation today that will keep drag racing forever, because even our time of no prep and prep track, all this is big, but when you go there clearly is now a gap of the age of the people that are doing it versus the early the people today, the teenagers today. The teenagers today, they're getting busted left and right because they're building cars and then they're going out to these invasions that they call, and they're just doing stupid donuts, and they're walking around with their iPhones in front of them, and they're getting hit and bounced off the fenders left and right, and it's becoming a problem. That's because back in the day, in the 1950s, what was happening, and you can see it in some of these movies. They actually used them as documentaries. The group here in the 50s said, "Hey, look, if you guys are going to be a car club, let's go to the Zilker Park. We're going to do a house meeting. This is documented in the newspaper, and we're going to show a safety film." And then there was a safety film from California where all these drag racers in California were actually trying to get people off the street. And it's basically because they were doing chicken games on the streets. They were racing in neighborhoods, and people would get ran over just because they were walking their dog or their kids. They weren't really drag racing like you would think they drag race. So anyway, that was one thing that they were combating back then. And I think that right now, as we are talking, there is some 18, 19, 17-year-olds saying, "Man, I can't wait to go this weekend to this hangout and show off the car." And then when they get there, oh man, the cops ran us off, or somebody got ran over, or somebody got hit. You can look it up right now on TikTok.
Yeah, you can look up a lot of that crazy.
I've seen a few videos.
It's starting to come up, and why can't you get these guys drag racing? Why isn't?
I don't know. I guess there's too many things. There's too many choices now. For people to do. Because back in the day, to go drag racing was a really exciting thing. It was unique. But now there's so many things that you can do. I guess it's just not appealing. I don't know.
I think I just think there's not enough coverage on a local level. Like you're not seeing it put on YouTube. You're seeing more of look how I'm gonna mess up this car, and you get a bunch of viewers. Wow, the dude, can't believe it. But you're not getting any of the cool coverage anymore of build a car and take it to a track and race your buddy and come home. That's not happening anymore. So it's kind of split in a way. So that's why I always ask the question: What do you think, man? What do you think people should do? What do you think tracks should do today? They're not catering to these young guys.
No. Yeah, they're not, and it's like you made a good point. Like other than unfortunately Street Outlaws, they're doing their thing, and they're
trying to make
big
the best
crowds.
of it.
They got a crowd that they started coming along, but I'm not a fan of it. I've been well noted on previous episodes, but like
there's a divide, and we talked about
in
it.
NHRA, like I said, they kind of lost the spectators, and they need to make a change if they if they want for it to be successful.
I mean, if you think about it, you can't find NHRA on Sunday on regular TV.
No,
you can't.
And what they do show is stuff that the average person will never have a chance at doing.
Right.
The average person, like your son's not. He can't go jump in a funny car. Or,
Josh is 18 years old.
Well, and that's you're right, because like I said, they showed it professional, but they got other they're the other classes.
So they used to back in the I don't know. How old are you?
I'm about 25.
Okay.
Now I'm entering my I'm in my getting close to 50.
Okay. Well, you may remember Diamond P Sports. They covered drag racing back in the 80s. They did a good job of covering all the categories, and that's what people like your son needs to see is that hey, I can do that. That's something I can do.
Well, that was the thing. That's the thing that I was asking. Josh, what he does here with us is he just makes sure that while we're talking, he could make sure that the computers, the video, and all that stuff is good, and then he evaluates the thing after we leave. What do you think? But one thing that he's learning is that none of his friends do this.
Right.
Not even underground street prep racing.
No, I believe it. No,
there's maybe 2 or 3 guys that he can say they're doing it because their dad did it, which is probably like my age, or somebody that they know in their family that did this in the 90s,
Right.
But aside from anybody else coming out of the tech shop, which that's how your dad met these guys, most of these guys are not into going in a straight line. more than anything, they're just fixing up a car and hitting up a whole different level of, you know, it could be a danger zone, because if you get into one of these, you know, these shows that seem like, oh, it's a great place to go show off, and now you just watch somebody get bumped, you know, by a turn, you know, spin out, you know, because they were trying to film, you know, and didn't realize that the camera is going to put you in the middle of that car doing a burnout. You know, it's happening everywhere, and the more and more you get it, I mean, they already kind of, I think they outlawed where the cops broke one up here in Austin, because, you know, what do they call them, Josh? Invasions or something? Takeovers. They just show up.
Go to the intersection, whatever they do.
But I mean, back in the day, it used to be takeover for drag racing in the middle of the night somewhere, but it was serious racing. Nowadays, it's a takeover to go do some burnouts. Can you do that? I mean, it's just.
I mean, I don't. I've seen a few videos of what you're talking about, and I'm surprised we haven't seen people get killed from it. Just because
it's dangerous. I mean, it's crazy.
Tires run over from waist to chest across. It's like, whoa, man.
How did he live?
Right. And it goes viral, and you're like, no. But besides the viral, man, that was just insane. That's crazy.
That couldn't have felt good.
It couldn't have felt good, you know. How did that person fare after they went home? What do you tell Mom and Dad? I just got ran over. I was taken to the hospital and something. But anyway, so it's definitely different times. But I just kind of ask, and me and Buck ask ourselves, what are these local drag strips? Like, we have a drag strip. It's not very local, but it's close enough.
Close enough.
How do we get these guys to go?
Well,
do we know?
It's. I mean, I'll give you an example of what I was talking about local. So in the 70s, especially into the early 80s, we had what were called modified meets. And the local tracks, like East Tex, Houston, La Plaza in Louisiana, there were 6 or 8 tracks in the Texas-Louisiana area that would have modified meets, and they would combine modified eliminator and competition eliminator. And it's a big deal. I mean, and the payout was good. I mean, they were usually $500. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but that was a lot of money then. Okay. And usually it'd be a Sunday at one track. I mean, a Saturday at one track, Sunday at another.
Damn.
And if you managed to pull off both, you got a bonus. Wow. So you'd win 500, you'd get a 500 bonus if you won. And it was a big payout back then.
Yes.
So it was like a circuit in a way, but within.
I mean,
local.
Talk about who's who would show up at these races were literally harder than national meets a lot of times.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking all the big guys were there. Lee Shepard, that's when he ran modified.
Oh wow.
All those guys.
Others.
Yes. There's Pete Smith. Dick Maris. I know you don't know these names.
No, they popped up. I kind of remember the name. What was the name of the Corvette? The Corvette you had me redesign the shirt because it was so wore out.
Oh, that's Earl Muscarelli, Wop Shop.
Wop Shop.
There were a bunch of top name. A lot of those guys went on. Most of the pro stock guys came from modified and comp.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. Larry Morgan. All those guys. They all ran at those meets I'm talking about.
Is that right?
Yeah.
They even showed up. Somebody posted some photos. They were at Little River back in those times, running right there at the track.
David Nickens is another one. I can't right now. I can't think. There's a ton of names.
There's quite a ton of them, right?
Yeah, on a local level, yesterday's recording, they mentioned a car that's running around there today. It's called, what they call it, Rat 1 or One Rat?
One Rat.
That was one of those cars back then, because there's a video I saw, somebody was posting.
So this is a car from the 70s one.
This is a car of 70s, or no, this is 80s, about
80s, okay.
But when you look at it, it looks like a Camaro, but it's a serious car because they're trying to run, or they're running better, like the Rear Morrison and those guys. Their motors are just, these are some big blocks. They've got the old Krager Super Tricks, but you can tell that that these cars have been set up to do that type of level of drag race. So these guys, you never saw them on the street, but when they went to the track and you see those guys that you just mentioned, and then you've got the locals. These cars were just as nasty as those, and so that one car we just
Rat 1,
it
just popped up, like we just started like there was the guy said like, oh yeah, Rat 1. Like, oh wow, that car been around for a long time. So anyway, So did you guys ever go run at Little River? I mean,
yeah. I've got a picture from way back, like '63 there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then several from the late '60s. But the last time my dad ever ran there was in '71. He was running a Hemi, and he couldn't stop.
He didn't go to the train tracks.
We ran pounds per cubic inch, so at that time we did not have a D-stroked Hemi yet, so it was the full 426. So the car literally weighed close to 3,000 pounds, and he was going 140 miles an hour at that track with two-wheel brakes.
That's pretty heavy. Stopping on brakes, yeah.
So he shoved that Hemi right up under the guardrail down on the end where it curved. Yeah.
Wow.
And he said, "I'm not ever running here again."
Oh wow.
So
did they have like a, well, I wouldn't say national event, but did they have like was there like a big meet for like cars for your class, or was it just hey, I'm gonna go out?
They had a few modified meets in the day. Dad had several match races there. I've got some articles, him having match races there. They always paid Dad to come run there. They paid tow money and just to show up because they knew he was a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, because
the regional owners were great people. I can't remember their names.
I think the Tomacheks. I think it was.
It was a name like that.
The Tomacheks that had owned it. The dad owned it. The son took over.
Yeah.
Anyway, they had owned it for a long time.
Yeah. Really good people.
Yeah. And so I understood that they would probably get guys like your father and like Gene Snow and Big Daddy. Yeah. And some other guys do like exhibition or something like a grudge, whatever we called it back then. So. That's interesting to know because, like I said, there's probably the articles out there. I don't know if there is.
I've seen them, but unless you know what you're looking at, it's going to be another photo. That's why I like bringing guys on and asking them. Yeah, that way, the next time I see a photo, I'm like, that's what he was talking about. That's if it wasn't for you, nobody. Or if you're listening, you're fortunate enough to get this in your ear. And the next time you go to Little River or something, you'll say, wow, this makes a lot of sense now. Because if you go in order of our shows, it kind of paints a picture, right?
Oh, yeah. It goes back to our, I guess to maybe one of our first or second episodes. I mean,
we just talked about what we were going to do. We said, hey, man, we'd like to bring
I have some great memories as a kid there. I mean, under those trees, knee-high soda waters, and that crosswalk.
The crossover.
We mentioned the crosswalk.
Crossover, pecan trees. That was a discussion that talked on some other. So that track is. I mean, it's got a lot of history.
Even as a kid, I laughed at the fact that they tried to run funny cars there because I thought there is no way. First of all, it's super narrow.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's super short, and I'd stand up on that crosswalk and watch them, and they would literally they'd drive through the chute the last 100 feet.
You don't know how many times I've heard people say I drove with the chutes on before.
No, they'd pull the chute way early and they'd drive through it.
Yeah, I bet they do. Like I said, that track is fun. It's it's basically, to everybody that's old Highway 95 basically. So it has and the other thing too that track's got a crown in it. It's like a highway, so it's got a crown in it. So that's the other tricky part. So
wow.
But yeah, a lot of good history. A lot of good stories, and I appreciate you saying that because it goes on to the theme, if you will, Central Texas itself.
Click it back.
It's definitely a good thing to hear, and I think everybody's going to appreciate it. So.
Oh yeah, one thing that I want to ask is you were a small crew. You're very good at carburetors. So were you the carburetor guy, or were you learning off of somebody who was doing the carburetor?
No, I actually learned carburetors after I was done racing with Dad. I mean, I knew him generally from working on the race car, but I just took it as just a personal quest, to learn them really through and through about 15 years ago.
Okay.
And got invested in a data logger and an O2 and learned how to use those things and tuning them because those things help streamline the process. But it's a passion of mine and it's a lost art.
Because you're one guy that supported me when I said I like 1050 Dominators on the street. You know,
Yeah.
You can't do that with those things. They don't. And when you heard it or something, you immediately said, "Oh yeah," and you welcomed the
I mean,
idea.
I've had one on mine for 5-6 years now.
And what size cubic inch do you have on your car?
438.
It's a 438. Oh wow, I was thinking you had to look through it too.
But I drive it all around. It burns clean. I get, on the highway, I get 14, 15 miles a gallon.
Tell people what kind of car you've got.
Yeah, let's
you
talk
go
about
to
some
shows
things
a
you got
lot.
on side. Yeah.
What this is your personal.
Yeah, it's just my fun car. I finally got a fun car when I was 50 years old.
So tell us about it. What kind of car? Year, make, model?
It's a 1970 Mach 1 Mustang. It's nothing super special. It came with a small block Windsor. This is the third engine I've had in it since I've had it. I still have the original block from it that I'm actually building a spare engine for right now. I always try to have a spare.
You run it on drag radials?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, he's a drag
And
radial.
it's a fun car. It's not a race car, but it gets out of its own way.
Have you ran quarter mile with that car?
Mm-hmm.
What's your best time on that thing?
1092.
1092 street car. There you go, guys.
Is it pump gas?
Yeah.
Nice.
See, this is the thing when you get with the professional man, they make it sound so easy.
I know, man. That's impressive.
It's not that fast, but it's fun.
No, it's fun. Like I said,
it's very.
And the other thing, you get 14 miles a gallon.
And it's a real Ford motor.
It's very docile and streetable, so it's got a real tight converter.
I see you at car shows. When it's the big car shows, and I see you there all the time. I always see you driving.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten out much lately, but I'm gonna try to go to the nostalgia.
Vintage
or
drag.
vintage drag. I'm
yeah.
sorry, not nostalgia.
Well, whatever they call
vintage,
it.
Yep.
Old school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Here,
vintage.
week and a half or
Yeah,
so.
Santa Fe's
October 8th.
October
8th, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be nice. I'm looking forward to seeing you there because I'll be taking some photos
Yep.
for Santa Fe there, and it's always cool to see you go down the track.
Yeah, it's fun.
Because you're pedaling it the whole way.
It's fun.
And then he comes back. I need to do this suspension. I need to do this. It's not.
Well, that's always a fight with that car is to get it to hook up.
Yeah, but when you see him, boy, he tailing it. I mean, it's fun. So that car probably has a little bit more in there.
No, that 1092 was a good run. It was a good solid. Yeah. Normally, it's a low 11 car.
Yeah,
but
this car does not look like a drag car. It looks more like one of those
like a true street car.
No, it looks like one of those old what do you call it, track cars back in the day, like the Edelbrock Smoky unit. Road course. Yeah, he's got that stance. It's lowered.
It is kind of like a road
rake
course.
on the road. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It looks So to pull those times and to have that stance, it's really really cool.
That's fun. I like to get it out 2 or 3 times a year.
And you've got a stock interior in it with the seats and all.
Yep.
Wow. What kind of transmission is in there?
C6. Just
nice.
Big old clunky. That thing soaks up about 100 horsepower.
You ever think about putting a 4-speed?
But you know what I like about it? It's bulletproof.
Yeah, that's even better.
It's not fun pulling that thing out.
Yeah, but do you ever consider putting a 4-speed or some 5-speed?
Oh yeah, I'd love to have a fun pedal in it.
Yeah. A fun pedal. There we go.
I would have done it a long time ago. I just don't want to butcher up a
solid car.
A car like that's original.
Yeah.
No, I'd love to have a 5 or 6 speed in it.
Yeah. Nah, man,
it'd be a second quicker.
It probably would.
Bang, bang.
So what would you get if it was a 5-speed? What kind of, like a Liberty, or what would you go with, the Jericho?
Sure,
I'd get a I wouldn't get a clutchless type. I'd get a regular, street type.
Conventional.
Yeah, something that could take the torque, and be reliable.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any projects? You got any other cars that you play with? So you
my dad's car. I help him with it.
Where's that car?
Yeah,
your dad has a car, like his old car, or
no? You've seen his coupe, right? That he built.
I wasn't aware. If I'm seeing it, I didn't know it was his.
He spent 10 years building a 36 3-window coupe.
Really?
It's a beautiful car.
Really?
What color?
Blue.
So is it like a stock, like a?
No, it's a street rod.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
No, you need to see it. It's.
Is he gonna take it? You guys gonna take it?
It's as fast as my car.
Whoa, Ray, we gotta go see that, man. So, is this you can take it to Vintage Drags and hang out?
No,
there?
he wouldn't put that car on the track because it's just too pristine.
Will he let you drive it?
Probably.
Okay, that'd be nice.
You need to see it though. It's
what's the power plant in that guy?
It's a 427 Cleaver.
Wow.
So he had some leftover race heads that were still in the box.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Got to utilize them. Can't let them just sit there.
He ported those and put them on a Windsor block, a Ford Racing Windsor block.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what kind of intake is that? Go on.
It's a Roush intake.
Yeah, I
you
figured
can't get anymore.
It's probably a unique one. Yeah.
Damn.
Wow. So we're gonna have to get some. If you don't have them, we need to get some photos or go check it out. Like I said, that's something we need to preview because that's some good stuff.
That's a sweet car. And he has the same drivetrain combination I do. It's a C6 with the gear vendor overdrive behind it.
There you go, Thomas.
Man, everybody, I guess that's the only way to go. I mean, if you want to have a good street reliable car with 14 miles a gallon,
well,
you gotta have that overdrive.
Either that or get the the late model overdrive
training.
I've had this for 20 years, so
Really?
If I were starting over, I'd probably just go with the late model overdrive.
There was a guy a long time ago. He was told by one of these old school guys. He says, "You know what those are, right?" Because Baldwin Motion used to put them in their cars.
Yep.
He goes, "You know all that is just an overdrive out of an Audi." And he's like, "What?"
So they just dashed on tail houses.
Well, he went to the junkyard and brought back one, and he goes, "Hey, I got one of those."
Yeah.
He goes, "I'm just gonna get somebody to machine me adapter to go behind the Turbo 400."
Yep.
And that's all it is. And you just hit the button over.
Yep.
And I'm like, so are you gonna do it? And unfortunately, I moved. I never got to see it. But they were so cheap.
They were doing it back then.
Well, he found them at the junkyard. He knew what he was looking for, and he didn't pay but $200-300 for it.
Yep.
And he says, this thing will, they told him they would handle horsepower, it was okay at 600 horsepower. I'm like, wow. And now gear vendors makes their own, but for the longest, they were selling custom.
Yeah, it's really just a. It's basically like a one-speed Lenco.
Yeah, just no gear back there that just gets activated.
And they are very tough. I think they're rated at 11 or 1200 horsepower or something like that. Some of the other gear, but they got two like flavors. They got the one that's like 15. They got a 2000. Right. Yeah.
So, right. But you're looking at $500 to $8,500.
It's crazy.
It's
so
crazy,
I bought mine.
But you had yours for 10 years.
Let's see, actually 20 years. Damn. Joe White was a distributor back then.
Oh, Joe White.
So he got me a good deal on one. Wow. And they're literally almost twice as much now as when I bought mine.
So wow, you had that long, So I mean, that, like you said, you had the 4060, 4080s. Some of the Fords got the 470Ws. Those are like late model overdrive. People retrofit those in there. So
I would not recommend a 4060 to anybody at this level.
Unless you bulletproof it, but
I tried. And
second gear, bye bye.
3 times.
Really? Is that the weak point? Second gear.
Second gear.
There's some things in there that that just don't hold up. There was a lot of problems with the servo.
They're weak.
A lot of people were like going back to the Corvette servo. I had an aftermarket one. It didn't do too well. I twisted the input shaft on the second time around. The third time I broke. It was an aftermarket Sprag. It broke.
No, that doesn't sound like fun.
No, it came out, and I had the car for 3 years, but
like I said, you just chunk and put 80 in there. I guess
every time I would pull it out, I would find something that would break in it, and
they're weak.
I'm like, man, I think I was so close. I had it built, and as a matter of fact, it's still sitting, and I lent it to a buddy. A complete B&M built turbo 350 with all the good stuff in it. And because I was this close to, I'm like, I'm done with this stupid thing. I was about to put that in there, and I never did. But
I'm not a fan of pulling transmissions.
No, they're not easy.
Well,
not on those.
I have. You go look at that. You look in the TV shows, right? People got lists. Oh yeah, but man, we didn't have lists, man. We're on the ground.
Even with lift, it's just it's just not. That's not what I like to do on Saturday afternoon.
I hear you.
Speaking of that, there was a short period of time that we ran what was called a clutch flight. Behind the Hemi.
Yeah. So an automatic
it's a 3-speed automatic.
Clutch.
But it's basically a 727 with a clutch.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But that thing, as you can imagine, so you're launching this Hemi with a 60-pound flywheel
Right.
at 8,000 RPM, dumping a clutch on that, and it yeah.
Those were on and off transmissions, pretty much power on.
The transmission was actually a very good. It just was never
slinging clutches or something. Or?
It was just never designed to take that kind of beating. I can remember Dad. I don't know how he would. I can just remember snap rings flying. He'd take that thing apart in the garage, you know, and there was hundreds of pieces.
Yeah.
I don't know how he knew how to put that thing back together, but he did every time.
Yeah.
You know,
I've been trying to get a friend of mine to come on the show. He's one of the top transmission guys out here, and he would put all the transmissions to use on the street.
Yeah.
But he's got so much in his head, he can pretty much tell you, oh, I know why that thing, you know, because he knows exactly. So I've been trying to get him in. He knows a lot about that
Those
stuff.
guys are few and far between.
Transmission guys.
Yeah. So if you want to know what's the weak point in any one of those transmissions, he'll tell you right off the bat.
That's cool.
This is what you need to change if you want that. But I wouldn't recommend you get that transmission because it's shit, you know.
Yeah.
But if I get him on, I definitely will ask him about the types of transmissions that will run. One of the things that they talked about that I had a friend talk with the hydro stick from way back in the day. They're still used.
That's what Dad started with.
In
the late 50s, early 60s.
These are they were also used in tanks, you know, because they can take a lot of power. And the gassers ran them back in the day. They're just really heavy.
So one of the things that really helped him a lot early on that a lot of guys didn't realize that he was doing was the first gear in those things was super low.
Low gears.
Kind of like a 406.
Most guys didn't even use it, but he did. But he would just use it to get it started, and then you just jam it in second gear immediately.
Nice.
So he literally would still be in a wheelie, and he hit it in second, and it helped it settle down.
Yeah. And it kind of does a slingshot.
Yeah,
dude. Here's a good. You made what you just talked about is that people might not have left in first gear, they may have left in second gear. Right. So like today's technology, like there's the turbo 400s.
Yeah.
They come pro glides. But with people making high horsepower like nitrous cars, instead of leaving in first gear, they leave in second gear.
Yeah. Or they're getting a
so
custom gear.
It's a turbo 400, but they use it 2-speed.
Yeah.
Second, third. So
I don't know.
They were doing that back then.
Yeah.
I mean, so
it's just a different level.
Just a different way. Yeah. So
they just have a refined version.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. It's just a refined version. It's a little bit more modern, but you're doing it back then.
One of the advantages that I had with that force, that gear's really low too. Yeah. It's a 306.
Right.
Yeah, 3 some first gear.
Well, when you put low gears in the car, and you take off on that gear, I always had that was my advantage. It's not that the motor was all this and all that. It was just that gear would just
get you out of the
jump me out of the hole so fast.
Yeah.
Well, good luck trying to catch me because it's going to take you some power now to get me. And it was like a slingshot when it go into second gear. And you can't do that with a turbo 400. You definitely can't do it with the turbo 350. But when you kind of combine it, so I know what your dad was doing.
Yeah. And like the power that people are making nowadays, right? People are like, man, I'll just blow tires. With the help of suspension parts now, but people like, oh shit, we're gonna leave in second gear now. Boom, boom, and it just major 60s, you're launching, not breaking entirely, it's hooking. So
just tone it down a little bit.
Just tone it down. Just take control your power. But so that's it. That's probably been going around, with that transmission. Now you got lockup converters now in the race. So that's a whole nother thing. So that's
Oh yeah, they got traction control built in.
But it's like the previous guy that we interviewed said. Yeah. Get off the keyboard and do more work to the suspension and the mechanical part of the car.
Right.
And
with
gain
this,
that half a second on that before you just.
With this, you're killing power. I'm gonna take power away. Well, do this other stuff. You can put power if you fix. So the where suspension parts are at now, or back then I should say, back then to where they're now, it's 360. It's like a world different.
Way better.
You can buy quality stuff, and you can put as much power as you want to anything if everything's dialed in right. So
guys like Santuff, have really developed the shop.
Oh, he started it, man. He's the innovators of that the dual valve the rebound. I mean, he's man. We're gonna have him on.
I took those AFCOs off you that you had.
And
I put them into the F body.
Yeah.
Just going to the clicks, and I know about my car, how I used to handle it, and so I just putting the adjustments on those shocks.
Oh, dude.
I learned something. I'm like, man, wow, this is. I mean, it just breakthrough. Fun.
And that's what it takes.
Yeah.
I used to have some old. There were some. They were double adjustable. They weren't a great brand. Anyway, when I took those off and I put my AFCOs on, man, I can just make it one click, 2 clicks.
Yeah.
Man,
car turns into a different setting.
No,
the evolution
they're
of shocks.
lifesavers.
Yeah,
for sure.
there's a lot of innovation in the shocks and suspension.
Yeah.
I enjoy the way you guys talk about that transmission because, everybody has their say about what works and what not. But if you got a track that's hooking, by all means you can put all the power down, low gear, boom.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're playing the game, and which a lot of people do, you can't just go, I'm gonna put all the power in. As a tuner, your dad and yourself, you have to know the track, what it would take,
right,
slipping the clutch, whatever,
right,
that type. So that's the tuning part.
Yeah,
that's the tuning aspect.
I mean, back until the mid '70s, Dad hung on to running injectors for that very reason, for the drivability. Mm-hmm. He knew he was giving up 15, 20 horsepower to dual dominators, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
But they were still running on a lot of tracks that were not so good.
Right.
And so with injectors, he could drive the car off the line. He could feather it more.
And this is gas or alcohol?
Gas.
So he's a a mechanical injection tuner.
Oh, he's a Hilburn guy. He knew Hilburn's.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's an art by itself. You have to.
But he could launch. Like if the track is kind of slick, he'd move the weight back to the back. He'd launch at 5,000 instead of 7 or 8. Drive it out of the hole.
I think
you can't do that with 2 dominators. It's all or nothing.
It's in or out, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, what I was gonna say is I think that your dad at this age, day and age, where gassers are making a big comeback, and there's an option for you to run mechanical or carburation. I think your dad will probably dominate in the mechanical with the mechanical injection because there's not that many tuners that know how to tune with gas. Yeah. It's a little more temperamental but with the career.
Yeah, he used to have a lot of guys, a lot of his own competitors come ask him to help. Because and he would. He just. Yeah. Because they weren't even in the ballpark, because those things can make you pull your hair out.
Man.
That's
like I said, the weather change, it works good, and just like a degree or the humidity goes
So my job, even as early as 9 or 10 years old, was to put the warm up pill in.
Oh wow!
When we got to the track, warm the engine up, and then change it out to the race pill.
And the barrel valve, right?
Yep.
Wow. I'm gonna bring you my mechanical intake so you can just check it out. I got one just because I was so interested in what they had to do.
Yeah.
Definitely, if I ever put it on something, I'll bring you over, and just so we can hear this thing. It's a unique
he knew him. He even had a match race with Don Nicholson, Dino Don, at Houston. That was in the AFX days. The AFXers were just coming out. That was what funny cars were.
Yeah.
And Dino Don had an AFX that ran, on nitro.
Yeah.
And of course, Dad was just running B altered, Right. But the guy that Nicholson was supposed to match race didn't show up. Yeah. So they asked Dad if he would fill in.
Yeah.
So he threw in some different nozzles on his injectors and ran 10% nitro.
See, you don't want to just change it unless you really know what you're doing.
Took 2 out of 3 too.
You knew what you were doing.
that there aren't many people that know about that.
No.
But that was amazing to me.
But for him to be able to make a on the fly change like that, and be
on the fly, it's like
he
obviously had to know what the the consequences would have been. But he
yeah,
knew.
no,
He
I mean,
knew.
he called. He called and got help, and he asked people that ran nitro. What percent do I need to run? How much extra fuel do I need to put in, and so forth.
But
he said that was like. He said that nitro was like a train hitting me in the ass.
Dude.
He said when I let the clutch out, he said it was a different. It was like it had 100 horsepower more.
Yeah,
I mean, just like nitro. I love it when you're at the nationals and you hear the funny cars and they start up on that regular fuel and then you hit that valve and it just
starts popping.
And you can smell, after a while, the atmosphere gets you. Either you're going to get a headache or you're going to say, this is cool, but...
it's just when that motor starts crackling, popping, they turn that
There's something in
nitro.
there. Like, okay, and when you're really close at Little River by the tower, and you're standing right there by the line, and you start hearing that noise, the car just sounds violent. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it is violent.
Until the smell passes to you, and you're like, oh,
that's a violent burn, violent combustion, man. It's just
yeah.
They were like, what are we doing here?
Speaking of nitro, the last couple of years we were at Indy, there were guys that were
playing with it.
They were putting a little bit of nitro in the oil.
What?
No, to thin it out.
When they would get into the final rounds.
Yeah.
Because the vapors from the nitro would find their way into the combustion chamber.
Oh, that's how they were getting. For every rule, there's a rule to be broken.
Yeah. Nobody said you couldn't add it in the
So
oil.
they were
also when you
willing
go
to
past
risk
the rings and hit that cylinder, it gives that little bit more. Ain't that some shit?
They'd pick up 400 or 500s, but
and then when tech comes to inspect it, they can't find nothing, right?
Of course, they were risking the lubrication part of their engine. But.
It's just the final round, just one more round. That's all they needed, right?
And then dump the oil quick. They used to always say that if you saw green flames, at the line, if the flame color changed, and you're not supposed to be running it, but if you notice the color,
I could kind of see that.
Yeah,
either you run at the end and try and catch them before they dump it, or they're probably going to run out of fuel or something. But or they get the oil out, but. That was one way that they could tell, and people would get into like an argument over
right.
stuff.
I can see that.
So,
of course, that is one thing that NHRA definitely has improved on over the years. Is
Now,
I mean, even back in the 80s, it was very strict. They had people waiting on us at the finish line. They would escort us to the scales, weigh the car, take a fuel sample. Everything was sealed, like you couldn't touch anything.
I was going to ask you, but because you're in the world of today's stuff in more depth, these turbo guys, because they run alcohol, wasn't the word around there for a little bit a few years back that some of these guys were maybe putting a little bit into it?
Well, like if you're running like straight M1 alcohol, which a lot of people do, just people figured out the tunes on the turbos. They don't have to run a cool charge, right? It makes power, but it's not street friendly. But I don't know if was that an actual thing, because M1 is M1. I mean, there's no cutting it or nothing. It's just straight alcohol, right? It's M1,
and that's what you mix it with.
Yeah, and there's no rules against it. I mean,
what is M1? Is that
so? It's basically alcohol. It's VP is called M1.
Is it methanol or?
It's alcohol. No, it is methanol. It's methanol based. Okay. So that's why I call it M1, right? So, but it's methanol and it's methanol based. So people run them on the turbo cars to help the spool, and
right.
They don't need a big old intercooler, right? It's a cool charge. So people figured it out and they run it, and it makes power.
Yeah.
A lot of people do the E85, right? E85 is the thing because that's more street friendly. Right. The cost. The other thing with M1 compared to like racing fuel, it's the cost, right? M1 is, I mean, you look in the range of regular, racing fuel is like 18 a gallon.
Right.
M1 is like, I think 5 or 8, 7 or 8 or something. E85 is, whatever pump gas is.
Yeah. I thought I had heard some guys had,
What was it, like as far as like them trying to
get a little
cheat the system and
get ahead? I mean, it's not really cheating because there's no rules to it. But I thought I had heard that.
I mean, there may have been something. I haven't heard nothing, but like I said, typically there's no like rule against it.
No, there's not.
Yeah, so
I just wonder how the motor, what the results are after you do experiment with it.
Just like every
turbo,
alcohol vehicle, if you're it's the general maintenance. You got to maintenance. You can't. Alcohol's going to run past your rings.
Because you can run, just to put it, just because we're talking on here, you can run a percentage. It doesn't have to be like
right.
It's not like you're running a full tank of.
Right.
There's a percentage that you can put into it, and each percentage will increase your power until your motor says kablooey, right? So I guess
methanol is pretty.
You can do 5%, 10%, 20. I don't know what the
nitro. That's one thing. Like say, you got to know how to work that nitro.
Yeah, you always see those guys.
I have seen guys at Little River. If they run like straight alcohol, like there's a friend of mine. He had a Pro Mod, and it was a big high helix 1471. I think it was a big supercharger, but they used to cut it. They used to put like a small percentage of nitro in it, and just to give them some more.
Little kick.
Yeah, a little bit kick, but like the E85, M1 guys running like turbo stuff. There's no. M1 is straight. You just dump it in. It's M1. Right. It's straight. I don't know.
I'm sure it comes down to air-fuel ratio. I mean,
absolutely.
Each combination has a happy point.
Computer, you can see it, read it.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about doing data logging. You can data log it.
Right.
Like pump gas is wide open 12.5, 12.7. M1 E85, it's a lot more cooler burn, so it's like 9, or whatever it may be. So it's and every engine is different.
Every engine is different. Some are more efficient.
Yeah, some are more efficient. Some are gonna have a different number. It's just where you make more power.
Mine actually likes to be on the leaner side. It likes to be more like 13.1, 13.2.
So, but that's where it's happy. As long as you check the plug, the plug is happy.
So there is no correct AFR. It's just the one.
It's just the number.
The one that your engine likes.
And AFR is ever like, well, you got to be around this. Like, well, every engine is different. So,
I've seen some of them want to be as rich as 12, 12.1.
And they're still happy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I dig the data logging, right? That's the.
It's just a tool. It's just something to help you streamline the process. Is all it is.
It's a nice tool, and it's good.
Yeah, dyno's the same way. Because let's face it, they don't all read the same. And so you can't compare numbers.
How well ventilated the dang room is too.
That's one of the factors. Yeah, but you just can't. The dyno really should be used as a tuning tool to make improvements. You get this number and you make a change. How did it change?
To get it.
Your dad back in the day, we're getting into the end of the rep, but I'd have to. There's just so many questions I can always ask you. Well, I mean, we can turn into part 2. Was there how did it work for a dyno? Did you even dyno? Was there a dyno availability back then to you guys? It was more of a rare thing.
So the first dyno that I can remember having access to was probably in the 81, 82, right in there. There were some around, but we didn't have access to them.
Wow.
And even then, in the early 80s, there weren't a whole lot of them. But we had the machine shop that sponsored us had one. Okay. And I remember the first time that I was in one.
Yeah.
The thing that got my attention that just blew me away was how much crap I could hear in the engine because it was muffled. Because they had the exhaust running in mufflers, and God, it sounded like it was going to fall apart. You could hear all the rocker arms and lifters and just
Can you understand what he's talking about? Because you've been next to the engine dyno right there.
You hear it. And the thing is, when a guy's making a pull on a dyno, it's like
I mean, I got used to it eventually, but the first time it was like, because you don't hear that at the racetrack.
Yeah, because they put that load on and they're like wide open. Then you hear that motor, they put that brake on it, and then the motor just comes. It's like, God, especially if it's your motor. But you're right. Like I said, you're right. You can hear all the clatter of the valve moving. It's like, is that right? But in the dyno, like I said, you should make changes because when they're making a pull, the goal is to get more horsepower. Make a jet change. Timing.
There's different. There's different ways that there's different approaches to. You can do flash pulls. You can have different pull rates. 300 RPM, 600, and so forth. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
The RPM level.
Right, and you know, in our form of racing, what they call recovery was super important. When you drop it into the next gear, you want your engine to recover. You want it. You don't want it to
want that big RPM
fall on
drop.
its face.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
So
I got you.
It needs to handle that change.
Right.
You know. So the better engines.
And it gives you an idea as to where to set your shift points.
Yeah.
That too. Like I say, if you're running a converter or if you're running a clutch, whatever, you know, you want that RPM range or RPM window to be more tighter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For recovery, you don't want to wow and then
Right.
recover back up. You want you know. So
see, some engines also accelerate better than others. They might make the exact same horsepower
Right.
across the curve, but some will accelerate better than others.
Big crank motor.
And those are just what those are more efficient engines. Those are engines, and you can't really measure that on a dyno.
Yeah, yeah. But that's why y'all like that Boss, because it was like a zing. You know, it would climb so easy.
It just, like I said, when you drop it in the next gear, some engines just respond better than others. You know.
What are your thoughts on a big block, Buck?
a big block?
You being in the engine dyno room.
I was a small block guy for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows that, but I was a small block guy, Chevy, a long time, and then 406, 434, right?
Yeah.
I mean, good low end power. You don't have to zing it up so high. It just depends what you want to do. And then when I got the big block, it was a different ball game. I mean, it's when you start looking at how much money you got to pull into a small block to make that horsepower to where you got to put in a big block. Big block, you don't have to put nowhere near the small block. So it's like, okay, that makes a little more sense. So I've been in big block for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right, rough and tough. But dyno pulls, there's nothing like a small block zinging on a dyno that just like makes you like happy. It's like, ooh, that's pretty. So on a dyno, small block, but I'm
big block just delivers.
Big block just delivers. Yeah.
It all comes down to. I mean, the sound is nice and everything, but the average horsepower is where it's at.
Yeah.
So that's
primarily when you're in class racing, because it's a. Well, anyway, I guess where you go. So.
Yeah. I mean, look at the pro stock engines, and they're unbelievable. Yeah. It's unbelievable what they're doing. First of all, they run a very low deck
block,
short stroke. So they have a stroke basically like a 350 Chevy.
Yeah.
They got a huge bore.
Yeah. So they're like a 499, 500 cubic inch, right? Whatever they are. Zinging them up.
Super light pistons.
Yeah.
Everything about them is just on the edge and perfect.
What's the cubic inch?
500.
Size 500.
Yeah, they're 500 cubic inch.
Yeah.
But yeah, what they zing? They're 11, 10.
They're making right at 3 horsepower per cubic inch.
Oh, God.
That's impressive.
They're making between 1450 and 1500.
Yeah. Wow. In a.
And their range is from probably I'm guessing 8800 to 9800.
Wow.
I think their rev limiter is 10.5 if I'm not mistaken.
What degree heads do they have? Y'all guys know?
I don't know. I don't know if they're conventional. They got to be some angled. I don't know. I don't know.
What's that?
The head.
The degree of the
the heads are exotic.
I'm sure they got some angle.
They're not only low angle valves, but they're twisted chambers, and they're
That's probably where all the magic is.
That's exactly why I asked.
That's a lot of it for sure.
Yeah.
And it's the whole thing. It's the whole package. I mean, their valve train's ridiculous. They have these springs that look like the springs on your front end.
Heavy cold spring.
Titanium. What are they? What are they made out of?
I'm sure the valves are titanium lightweight. I'm sure
it's just a high grade steel
alloy.
Some shit you can't get a hold of.
You can get it. You just got.
You got to pay for it.
I'll look at my wallet. And see if I can get them.
But cool deal, man. Like I said, it's almost where we could probably keep going. Like I said, we're probably gonna have you on again. I mean, if you don't mind, we're probably gonna invite you back again. A lot of good information. I like the history.
Yeah.
I like all the information that myself and I'm sure everybody else is probably gonna agree they probably wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah, we're gonna have some technical, technical questions. We're gonna ask the stuff that that will put a listener with one ear open, and it'll make them question, wow, what did I just listen to?
Yeah.
Do I need to look into it some more? I didn't know that. Some stuff like that. And that's why I'll ask the questions that will. Only a guy like you would be able to answer, because a street level guy is never gonna know what it's like to be in the NHRA. Doing things.
And I don't even attempt to talk. I can tell when there's a guy that is from my era, or then I can talk to him. But otherwise, you're just wasting your time.
Right.
But
and like I said, all the knowledge is like, and the other thing that got me, like I keep saying, well, what you guys were doing back then, they're doing it now.
It's just refined. It's refined, and they definitely have made improvements, and kudos. I mean, a lot of the stuff's very impressive for sure, but I'm proud that we were there to pioneer it, and give them a good base to work off of.
That's
well, you guys definitely gave me an interest early on, about 15 years ago, and I just kind of wanted to know where did this stuff come from in Austin. It had to come from some high school somewhere, and there must have been a group somewhere. And so I love bringing you guys on. When you talk about your dad, just the experiences that you went through as your childhood, knowing most 70% of your life was just that, living and breathing it. Guys today, they'll say, "Oh man, I live and breathe this shit." Well, look at this guy. He's been doing it most of his life, and he says Dad's still there.
No, there's only one guy that I personally have seen that would thrash as hard as my dad, and that was Bob Glidden.
Right, and that would put your dad right up there, even or higher. I saw the same look in his face and eyes when he worked as my dad, and just the same, driven ferociousness. And there are other guys too, like Warren Johnson, and Jenkins. Those guys, they're just hardcore. They lived and breathed it. Man, I'm definitely gonna go home today with a nice smile. It's always like we say, "Oh, this was a great show."
I appreciate you guys having me, because I always like talking car, especially when I can go back.
Well, I appreciate it, Trey. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, and again, we may ask you back for just a recap, because there's so much other stuff.
For sure. If nothing else, I'll come spectate. As long as you have beverages.
For sure. It's not a show. The only reason why I don't do a beverage here is that I gotta drive back. I'm like, damn it,
No, like I said, anytime. Like I said, I appreciate it. You got anything to wrap up?
No, man. We just want to bring you back on.
Yep.
We're gonna keep you on the Rolodeck. Vintage Drags. We're gonna definitely see you.
Oh yeah, Vintage Drags.
We're gonna take some photos.
Yep.
So we're telling everybody that's come on here, we're looking at bringing everybody back. Another turn
cycle,
by December.
Awesome.
So I know there's always something new. I may run into you at a car show the next time around, and we'll have something to talk about then. And so definitely, you're going to be one of the regulars. Everybody who's been on here, you guys listening, you guys will be what makes this show happen. Without you guys, this is really not a show. And Trey, you just joined the list and the family of guys that keep sitting down here. And
awesome.
Yeah, man.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. We appreciate it. Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Till next time. See you next.
See you guys. Bye.
Peace.